This buyer lost $725. I was on the other side of that deal. Then the house, then $1,500 in inspections. Nobody tells you what happens when the deal falls apart. I collected that money for my seller. What did this buyer actually do to lose their earnest money in this transaction? My name is George Kindler, and I have over 250 transactions here in the St. Louis market, and I have collected tens of thousands of dollars in earnest money for my sellers because buyers make mistakes that they don't even know that they're making. That changes right now. The buyer ultimately made promises that they were unable to keep, but the real question is, what is earnest money? When you make an offer on a house, you put down 1 to 2% of earnest money, and that tells the seller that you are serious. It's a good faith deposit, meaning that you are going to meet the contract and hit all the deadlines. The worst day in real estate for me is a day that we have to cancel a transaction that everyone has hours and hours poured into getting the deal to the finish line. This buyer was a little unique because they didn't miss any of their contingencies. Their inspection was done and negotiated, and their financing was in place, but they had a divorce settlement from a home in Hawaii that they were waiting to close, and it was supposed to close right before our closing. That's not what happened, but I will tell you the 3 mistakes that I have seen and resulted in me collecting tens of thousands of dollars for my sellers here in St. Louis. That seller takes their property off the market, they make plans. Your earnest money is insurance that you're going to perform on the contract. And if you don't, they have some means of recourse. Mistake number 1, missing your inspection contingency. A few days later, you want out, you call your agent, you let them know, then they call me and I have to give them the bad news that that contingency actually expired 3 days ago. The day you go under contract, you put every single deadline in your calendar with a few days notice to remind you, hey, this deadline's coming up, what's the action plan here? The seller was more than willing to extend the closing, but when it came down to it, we could not extend the financing contingency. The buyer had to have some skin in the game, and the buyer completely agreed to extend the closing knowing that his earnest money was at risk at this point. Mistake number 2 is waiving your financing contingency just to win the bidding war. This one is complicated because many buyers do it, especially in multiple offer situations, but they don't really know what they're actually giving up. That financing contingency protects you in the event your loan falls apart. If you waive it, that protection is gone. The loan falls apart, the interest rate goes up, something was different about employment, or the lender finds an issue, loan denied. Understand the risk completely before you waive anything, not after, and that's before you sign the contract. One of the reasons that buyers end up here is that they didn't actually interview their agent. That's why I built stlhomejourney.com to help you understand the full process and what it's actually like to walk through the entire process with a real estate agent, including interior tours, contract to close, and other resources that are valuable to you, and it's all free. When it finally got down to it, the buyer was not able to close because his closing in Hawaii got extended once again with no new closing date in the near future. And so that meant the buyer and seller had to make a decision. And my seller actually offered to them some creative financing, some seller financing, and the buyer refused. The best route for both the buyer and seller was for the seller to accept the earnest money and for the buyer to forfeit the earnest money. That way there was no more legal obligation from the seller or from the buyer. Otherwise, the seller could have sued for specific performance, but that would just tie the property up and delay closing and getting the property back on the market. Mistake number 3 is failure to perform and saying, I just don't want to close. That's the best way to lose your earnest money in a real estate transaction. I understand it. The fear is real. Second thoughts are real. None of that is in the contract. Once your contingencies expire, you've committed. And walking away is not an option. That's actually breaking the agreement. Don't go under contract on a home you are not prepared to buy. This is a real mutual release from a real transaction. Over $2,200 gone, no house, no refund. Earnest money is not a formality. It is a commitment. It's a legal one. Know your deadlines and understand every contingency before you waive one of them. I'm George Kindler. I appreciate you watching. I'll see you on the next video.